The sea has always been both friend and stranger. Its surface changes with light and shadow, wind and silence, tides that obey no one's call. For those who live near it, the sea is not a distant horizon, but a daily companion, sometimes generous, sometimes ruthless. In Viking Age Iceland, this was truer than almost anywhere. The land yielded only what it could, rocky and plentiful, but the waters, dark, cold, and restless, offered enough fish to satisfy hunger if one was patient and brave. Hello, everyone. Today's story invites you to immerse yourself in this world. Not a world of raids or sagas filled with kings and warriors, but something quieter, something much more ordinary, and perhaps more enduring. This is the life of a fisherman, a man who waits for the tide, who tends his nets, who listens to the gulls and the crashing waves while time itself seems to breathe in long, slow rhythms. Imagine the silence of a gloomy Icelandic morning. The sky is pale, neither night nor day, with low clouds carrying the damp salt of the sea. Along the shore on the pebbles stand small boats, drawn high against the changing current. The nets, rolled up and heavy, lie, smelling faintly of tar and brine. Somewhere a fire flickers in a sod house, warming a pot of broth before the men set out on the waves. It is a world where every sound seems amplified. The crunch of footsteps on gravel, the splash of a sail being prepared, the slow rolling of the surf. As we move through this story together, you will see not the noise of history's great battles, but the gentler rhythm of survival. What it is like to mend a net as the wind touches your cheek. What it is like to hear the sound of oars evenly cutting the water. How a day is measured not by the rising of the sun, but by the ebbing and flowing of the tide. There is something soothing about this way of life. The fisherman takes his time. The sea teaches patience. He knows that to fight the rhythm of the waves is to be defeated. Instead, he learns to move with them, to wait, to listen, to prepare. There is a kind of calm in this waiting, one that lulls both body and mind. And perhaps, as you listen, you too will feel yourself gently swaying on the waves, your thoughts drifting to and from the sea. This story is not rushed. It should be listened to slowly, like the tide, like the breath itself. So make yourself comfortable. Let yourself be carried away by the small details of this life, the taste of dried fish, the rustle of wool against your skin, the scent of seaweed carried inland by the wind. Feel the simple weight of the day as it unfolds without urgency, without demands. And as the story ends, remember that this canal lives on its own tides, not water, but your kindness. If you find solace here, if these quiet journeys through time bring you rest, be sure to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps this space remain stable, like a lantern on the shore that guides us back each night. And now let's begin. Waiting for the tide by the sea in Viking Iceland. The night is still on the northern coast of Iceland, sometime in the 10th century. The stars, muffled by thin veils of cloud, linger like dim coals above the horizon, where sea and sky merge into one gray blur. The wind has softened for now, caressing the edges of the sod-roofed houses like a sleepy breath. Outside, the shoreline awaits, a ribbon of wet black stones, seaweed, and old fins, silver in the moonlight. In a low, long house nestled in a hollow near the shore, the fisherman Thorvaldur rests on a straw mattress by a peat fire. The warmth is modest, but sufficient. His boots stand by the fire, stuffed with wool to dry. His fishing line is carefully wound around a wooden stake. His boat, a clinker rowboat with iron nails and tar-blackened seams, lies on the shore not far from the door, stretched out a little beyond the high tide. This house, like many others in the area, is built into the landscape, not on it. Thick walls of turf and stone keep out the wind, and the curved roof is covered with turf, now hardened and frosted. Smoked fish hang from the rafters in dark corners. A small cat is curled up tightly in a box lined with wool. Somewhere in the distance, a sheep is coughing. It is not yet morning. It is that still, uncertain time between night and day, when the world itself seems to be catching its breath. Thorvaldur stirs, not quite awake, not quite asleep. He listens as always to the faint sound of the tide gently lapping against the rocks. In Viking Iceland, fishing is not just a means of livelihood, it is a rhythm, a long, slow wait for the sea to yield what it desires. Cod, mostly. Sometimes haddock or herring. Often salted, dried, and wrapped in bundles of twine and birch bark, this fish is the currency of survival. And survival here is a patient, unremarkable affair. This is not a place of hurry or noise. This is a place where the wind shapes everything. Even the language of the local people, with its soft consonants and drawn-out vowels, seems to be carved by the wind. Thorvaldur inhales. The air smells faintly of peat smoke, salt, wool, and earth. He is in no hurry. He never is in a hurry. By the time the first weak light filters through the clouds, the longhouse is already stirring. Not bustling, just stirring. A quiet cough, the creak of a wooden spoon in a horn bowl, the soft scrape of sheepskin against packed earth floors. Thorvaldur sits on a low stool near the hearth. Before him lies a tangled length of fishing net. It's an old net, flax cord knotted by hand years ago, and its repairs have become something of a daily ritual. His fingers, thick and wind-chapped, move slowly but surely, teasing out twists, tying in fresh lengths of cord where the old has frayed. Outside, the wind rattles a dried cod skin hanging by the door. A gull calls, harsh and distant. The tide is still low. It will be hours before the boat can be pushed out. There is no rush. He mends. He waits. The walls of the longhouse are lined with everyday things. A carved wooden comb, a thick wool cloak, a few bone needles in a leather pouch. Each item is worn but serviceable, shaped by daily use. Nothing here is for show. Occasionally, Thorvaldur glances up from his work and watches the fire. It crackles gently, feeding on damp peat bricks dug from the nearby moor. Their smell is earthy, almost sweet. Outside the small opening above the hearth, the sky is a soft gray, deepening slowly toward blue. By now, a few neighbors have passed along the footpath between the houses and the beach. One calls a greeting. It is not answered with words, just a nod. That's enough. The boat will need to be checked soon. Ropes examined, oarlocks cleaned of grit. But there is time. For now, the net. The knots are small and deliberate. Over, under, pull. Over, under, pull. Outside, a gull circles. By mid-morning, the gray sky has lifted a little. Not cleared, but lifted. A dull brightness presses through the clouds, lending the beach a colorless clarity. The tide is halfway in, and the boat is now resting on wet pebbles, close enough to the edge that it can be nudged into the water when the time comes. Thorvaldur stands by the boat with one hand resting on the wooden side. His fingers trace the ridges of the grain, worn smooth by years of salt and sun. The boat is small, just enough for 1 or 2 men, but sturdy. Planks overlap like fish scales. The seams are caulked with wool soaked in pine tar. It creaks faintly as he shifts his weight. Beside him lies a shallow wicker basket filled with bait, strips of fish liver, and bits of shellfish collected the day before. He checks the line, the oars, the pitch bucket. Everything is quiet. A faint mist drifts along the edge of the water. It clings to the kelp and softens the line between sea and land. Farther down the beach, another fisherman launches his boat with the help of his sons. The boys laugh, briefly, and then fall silent. The creak of oars drifts across the water. Torvaldr waits. His tide has not yet turned. Behind him, the path leads back to the longhouse and farther still into low hills dotted with sheep and rocks. A raven perches on a driftwood branch. It watches him for a while and then lifts into the air with a slow beat of wings. The basket is recovered with seaweed to keep it cool. The mist shifts. Nothing urgent, nothing loud. Just the quiet mechanics of a life near the sea. Finally, with the tide at its highest and the wind soft enough, Torvaldr pushes the boat off from the pebbled shore. The sound is gentle. A scrape, a splash, a soft rustle of water under the hull. He steps in with practiced ease and takes up the oars. The boat rocks once, twice, then settles. He rows slowly, facing backward, watching the shoreline shrink. The longhouse becomes a shape, then a blur, then disappears behind a low rise. The ocean is calm today, a patchwork of soft swells and darker currents. No whitecaps, just a slow breathing, like the sea is in no hurry either. Around him, the world is large and still. The clouds hang low, and the horizon fades into their edges. Somewhere in the distance, a seal surfaces, stares, then vanishes. Torvaldr pulls the oars in gently and lets the boat drift. He reaches for the line, coarse flax twine, knotted and coiled in his lap, and begins to bait the hook. One motion at a time, his hands move as if they've done this 1,000 times. Because they have. The hook drops silently into the water, pulling the line with it. He leans back against the curved hull and waits. There's no need to speak. No one to hear. The only sounds now are the soft slap of water against wood, the whisper of the breeze, the occasional creak of the boat shifting. Hours may pass like this, just waiting, watching, letting the sea decide. The sea does not rush. It invites waiting. As Torvaldr rests in the drifting boat, the baited line gently tugs below, moving with the slow rhythm of the tide. The water is dark and deep beneath him, shaded by cloud and stirred by unseen currents. It isn't a fierce sea today, nor particularly generous. But then again, it rarely is. The cod come when they please. Torvaldr sits with his back against the ribbed hull, his feet braced lightly against the opposite side. A second line lies coiled in the bottom of the boat, ready to be used if the first yields nothing. His eyes are not fixed on any one point. They roam slowly over the broad, colorless horizon. The silence is not total. The water has its whispers. A soft plop as a fish breaks the surface in the distance. The groaning of old wood as the boat shifts with the movement of the tide. The faint sound of gulls far away, arguing on some hidden rock. His fingers hold the line loosely, trained to feel even the subtlest twitch. Sometimes it's a crab, sometimes a drifting clump of kelp, sometimes, rarely, it's nothing at all. But this morning, after a long while, there is a pull. Not strong, just a steady pressure. Torvaldr doesn't startle. He simply tightens his grip and waits. The weight grows slightly. He begins to draw the line in with slow, even pulls, winding it carefully around his hand and elbow, mindful not to fray the cord. From the deep, the fish emerges. A cod, long, pale, and dappled with dark specks. It shimmers faintly in the gray light, its mouth agape, its tail limp but heavy. Torvaldur brings it aboard with little fanfare. He lays it in the bottom of the boat and stuns it with a single, quiet blow from a wooden club. It doesn't take long. There is no celebration, no exclamation, just a slight nod. The fish is set aside. The line is baited again. The boat drifts. The sun never truly breaks through. But by midday, the gray has lifted a little more, letting in a paler, milky light that settles gently on the sea's surface. The water becomes a mirror in some places, though rippled in others, as if remembering the wind from earlier. Torvaldur has caught 2 fish now. A fair morning, neither meager nor bountiful. He's not greedy. The boat could hold more, but it doesn't need to. His household is small. His needs even smaller. He eats a bit of dried bread from a pouch tucked under the seat. The bread is dense and dark, with a tang of sour whey and the occasional grit of ground stone. It's not meant to be savored, just to sustain. He drinks a few gulps of sour milk from a leather skin. It's cold and sharp, but it helps settle the belly against the salt air. Then he rests again. The line dangles into the sea, unmoving for now. His hands lie open in his lap, as though even they have grown tired from waiting. He watches the clouds shift. One shape becomes another. A curl becomes a spiral, becomes a streak, becomes nothing. On the edge of the sky, a line of birds, perhaps puffins or eiders, move slowly toward the coast. They fly low, near the water, following some route only they understand. Torvaldur tracks them with his eyes until they vanish behind the gentle swell of a distant headland. Somewhere farther out, a pod of whales may be passing. He can't see them, but he imagines their backs rising and falling like dark islands. The old stories speak of sea beasts with glowing eyes and boats dragged into the depths. But Torvaldur knows better. The sea has its own rules, and none of them care much for men's fears. A third tug on the line. A smaller fish this time, perhaps for drying or stew. He pulls it up with the same steady pace as before. There is no hurry, only tide and time. By early afternoon, the light begins to shift again. It's not brighter, just different. A cooler tone drapes itself across the sea, and the wind stirs with more confidence. It brushes the water and tugs gently at Torvaldur's cloak. The tide has begun its slow retreat. The signs are subtle at first, the way the boat no longer drifts outward, the way the line slackens more quickly than before. Torvaldur senses it more than observes it. It's time to return. With practiced rhythm, he draws in the line, carefully coils it, and sets it aside. He arranges the fish at the base of the seat, 3 good cod and 1 small haddock, and covers them loosely with seaweed to keep the flesh cool. The oars are lifted, placed into the iron rowlocks with a dull clink, and dipped into the water. Pull, breathe. Pull again. The boat moves slowly across the surface, cutting no great path, disturbing nothing more than it needs to. Torvaldur does not strain. He rows with the ease of someone who has done this hundreds of times. Letting the current do part of the work, the coastline grows larger, more defined. The rise of the shore, the curve of the bay, the small specks of longhouses huddled close to the land. They come back into view, gently, like old friends returning. Closer now, the shapes become familiar. The drying racks for fish, the smoke from a turf hearth, the black line of birds perched on the ridgepole of a house. He guides the boat into the shallows, then steps into the water with a slow splash. The sea is cold, but he doesn't flinch. He pulls the boat ashore, one tug at a time, until it rests again on wet stone. The journey is done. Not epic, not dramatic, just done. And that is enough. Once ashore, Torvalder carries the fish up the path, past the peat-walled sheds and through the worn wooden gate of his homestead. A long, flat stone near the side of the house serves as his working table. It's been used for this task for as long as he can remember. He lays the fish out one by one. Their bodies are limp now, their scales dulled by exposure. Still, they are beautiful in a quiet way, shaped by the sea, glistening faintly with the memory of the deep. With a sharpened, bone-handled knife, he begins the process of gutting. His hands move with deliberate care. A cut behind the gills, a clean slit down the belly, the organs removed and set into a wooden bowl to be later buried or fed to the animals. The cod are split and laid open, their white flesh exposed to the cold air. A pinch of sea salt is rubbed across the inside of each fillet, enough to draw out moisture, to preserve, not overwhelm. Salt is valuable, never wasted. Once cleaned and salted, the fish are brought to the rack. Thin wooden poles strung between uprights near the shed wall. Here they will hang for days, drying in the cold wind until they are leathery and firm. Torvalder works slowly, not from fatigue but from the habit of care. There is no rush in preservation, only rhythm. The sun, such as it is, begins to lower behind the hill. Its pale light casts longer shadows now, long across the ground, long across his hands. He wipes the knife clean, sets the bowl aside, and rinses his hands in a wooden basin filled earlier from a nearby spring. A last check of the boat, a glance at the sky. Still calm, still gray. A good day, not remarkable, but good. The day moves toward evening, and the sky softens into a deeper shade of gray. Shadows lengthen slowly over the turf walls and the scattered stones. The peat fire inside the longhouse burns low but steady, its flickering light casting faint orange glows on the worn wood and rough woolen fabrics. Torvalder sits beside the hearth once again. His hands are clean but slightly rough, smelling faintly of salt and earth. Outside, the wind has picked up, carrying the distant cry of gulls and the steady murmur of the sea. The drying fish hang quietly on their poles, their silhouettes stretched long against the fading light. There is a solemn stillness in the air. No grand moments, no drama. Just the slow passage of time marked by the tide and the sky. Torvalder looks out through the small window, watching the peat smoke drift upward and dissolve into the gray. He thinks of the day's catch, the sea, the wind, the slow, deliberate cycle that shapes everything. His thoughts are not loud or urgent. They are soft and drifting, like the evening mist rolling over the shore. The world outside is settling for the night. The gulls have gone quiet. The waves lap gently. The wind whispers through the grass. Within this quiet, the heart of the fisherman rests. The longhouse grows darker as the peat fire dwindles, and the last embers glow faintly beneath the ashes. Torvalder moves slowly through the familiar routine of evening tasks. He checks the door, sealing it against the cold with a thick woolen blanket. He arranges his bedding, folding the wool blankets and furs carefully. A small bowl of dried fish and rye bread sits on a shelf for the night's sustenance. Nearby, a leather pouch of dried herbs and a wooden cup are arranged neatly, ready for the quiet hours ahead. Outside, the wind hums softly around the corners of the house. The tide has retreated again, leaving the beach exposed and silent. Only the faintest hint of salt air remains in the stillness. Torvalder lights a small rushlight to guide him briefly. Its soft glow dances on the stone walls, revealing the scratches and marks of years gone by. There is no hurry to sleep, no urgency to rest. The night is long and slow, measured by the ebb and flow of the sea outside. He listens to the steady crackle of peat, the slow creak of timber settling, the distant whisper of waves. His thoughts drift with the tide, gentle and untroubled. Outside, the world has fallen into deep silence. The stars peek through breaks in the cloud, pale and distant. The wind is barely a breath, a faint stirring over the still water. Torvaldur lies on his bed of straw and wool, wrapped in blankets thick with sheep's wool and the smell of earth. The peat smoke lingers softly in the air, warm and faint. His breathing slows and deepens, matching the rhythm of the sea beyond the walls. In this deep quiet, the night feels vast and endless. The tide will turn again soon. The fish will come with the dawn or not. But for now, there is only waiting and the slow passage of time. The room is dark except for the faintest glimmer of the dying rushlight, casting soft shadows that move gently as if breathing with him. Torvaldur is a small figure in the vast northern world, held gently by the sea, the wind, and the earth beneath him. There is peace here, a quietness beyond words. Slowly, the first faint light of dawn creeps over the horizon. It is pale and muted, more a suggestion than a burst. The clouds are soft and low like spilled ash. The air is cool and still, carrying the subtle scent of salt and peat. Torvaldur stirs once more, waking to the familiar rhythm of the sea and sky. The longhouse is quiet but full of memory. The echoes of work done, fish caught and salted, tides awaited and observed. He rises carefully, feeling the slow warmth of the peat fire from last night. Outside, the boat waits, tethered and ready for another day. The tide will rise again. The sea will whisper its secrets, and the fishermen will listen quietly, patiently. As dawn unfolds, the world returns to its gentle, unhurried pace. The long night ends, as it always does, with the promise of another slow day by the sea.